12 May, 907 AD. Zhu Wen forces Emperor Ai into abdicating, ending the Tang dynasty after nearly 300 years of rule. 1191, Richard I of England, Lionheart to his friends, marries Berengaria of Navarre in Cyprus. She is crowned Queen Consort of England the same day. 1551, National University of San Marcos, the oldest university in the Americas, is founded in Lima, Peru. 1588, the French Wars of Religion. Henry III of France flees Paris after Henry I, Duke of Guise, enters the city, and a spontaneous uprising occurs. 1743, Maria Theresa of Austria is crowned Queen of Bohemia after defeating her rival Charles VII, Holy Roman Emperor. 1780, American Revolutionary War. In the worst defeat ever suffered by the Continental Army, Charleston, South Carolina is taken by British forces. 1797, the War of the First Coalition. Napoleon Bonaparte conquers Venice. 1846, the Donner Party of Pioneers departs Independence, Missouri for California on what will become a year-long journey of hardship and cannibalism. 1865, the Battle of Palmito Ranch, the first day of the last major land action to take place during the American Civil War, resulting in a Confederate victory. We had to give him a little participation ribbon. You know how it is. 1926, the Italian-built airship Norga becomes the first vessel to fly over the North Pole. 1937, the Duke and Duchess of York are crowned as King George VI and Queen Elizabeth of the United Kingdom in Westminster Abbey. 1982, during a procession outside the Shrine of the Virgin Mary in Fatima, Portugal, security guards overpower Juan Maria Fernandez y Cron before he can attack Pope John Paul II with a bayonet. Interesting choice of assassination weapon, I think. Right. 2002, former U.S. President Jimmy Carter arrives in Cuba for a 5-day visit with Fidel Castro, becoming the first president of the United States in or out of office to visit the island since the Cuban Revolution. 13 May 1568, Mary Queen of Scots is defeated at the Battle of Langside, part of the civil war between Queen Mary and the supporters of her son, James VI. And if you don't know much about Scottish royal history before the Union of the Crowns in 1603, that's actually how bad it got. Because how many times have you had to fight a battle against your mom? 1780, the Cumberland Compact is signed by leaders of the settlers in the Cumberland River area of what would become the U.S. state of Tennessee, providing for democratic government and a formal system of justice. 1846, the Mexican-American War. The United States declares war on the Federal Republic of Mexico following a dispute over the American annexation of the Republic of Texas and a Mexican military incursion. 1861, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom issues a very carefully worded proclamation of neutrality, which recognizes the Confederacy as having belligerent rights, but stops short of calling it an actual country. 1862, the USS Planner, a steamer and gunship, steals through Confederate lines and is passed to the Union by a Southern slave, Robert Smalls, who later was officially appointed as captain, becoming the first black man to command a United States ship. 1912, the Royal Flying Corps, the forerunner of the Royal Air Force, is established in the United Kingdom. 1940, Germany's conquest of France begins as the German army crosses the Meuse. Prime Minister Winston Churchill makes his blood, toil, tears, and sweat speech to the House of Commons. 1958, during a visit to Caracas, Venezuela, the U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon's car is attacked by anti-American demonstrators. 1958, a group of French military officers leads a coup in Algiers, demanding that a government of national unity be formed with Charles de Gaulle at its head in order to defend French control of Algeria. 1972, a car bombing outside a crowded pub in Belfast sparks a 2-day gun battle involving the Provisional IRA, Ulster Volunteer Force, and British Army. 7 people are killed and over 66 injured. 1995, Alison Hargraves, a 33-year-old British mother, becomes the first woman to conquer Mount Everest without oxygen or the help of Sherpas. The 14th of May, 1097, the Siege of Nicaea begins during the First Crusade. 1264, the Battle of Lewes. Henry III of England is captured and forced to sign the Mise of Lewes, making Simon de Montfort the effective ruler of England. 1607, English colonists established James Fort, which would become Jamestown, Virginia, the earliest permanent English settlement in the Americas. 1747, the War of the Austrian Succession. A British fleet under Admiral George Anson defeats the French at the First Battle of Cape Finisterre. 1796, Edward Jenner administers the first smallpox inoculation. 1800, the 6th United States Congress recesses, and the process of moving the federal government of the United States from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. begins the following day. 1804, William Clark and 42 men depart from Camp Dubois to join Meriwether Lewis at St. Charles, Missouri, marking the beginning of the Lewis and Clark expedition's historic journey up the Missouri River. 1878, the last witchcraft trial in the United States begins in Salem, Massachusetts, because where the hell else would it be? After Lucretia Brown, an adherent of Christian Science, accused Daniel Spofford of attempting to harm her through his mental powers. 1948, Israel is declared to be an independent state and a provisional government is established. Immediately after the declaration, Israel is attacked by the neighboring Arab states, triggering the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, which we now lovingly know as the 2024 Arab-Israeli War. 1955, 8 communist bloc countries, including the Soviet Union, sign a mutual defense treaty called the Warsaw Pact. 1973, Skylab, the United States' first space station, is launched. 15 May 392 AD, Emperor Valentinian II is assassinated while advancing into Gaul against the Frankish usurper Arbogast. He is found hanging in his residence at Vienne. 1252. Pope Innocent IV issues the papal bull Ad Extirpanda, which authorizes but also limits the torture of heretics. During the medieval Inquisition, 1618, Johannes Kepler confirms his previously rejected discovery of the third law of planetary motion, which he first discovered on March 8th, but then rejected soon after when he made his first calculations, and then he changed his mind again. Moral of story, that's how freaking science works. 1817, opening of the first private mental health hospital in the United States, the Asylum for the Relief of Persons Deprived of the Use of Their Reason. So if you thought politically correct names were just a modern convention, think again. 1864, the Battle of New Market, Virginia. Students from the Virginia Military Institute fight alongside the Confederate Army to force Union General Franz Sigel out of the Shenandoah Valley. 1905, the city of Las Vegas is founded in Nevada. 1911, in Standard Oil Company of New Jersey versus United States, the U.S. Supreme Court declares Standard Oil to be an unreasonable monopoly under the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 and orders the company to be broken up. 1940, the Battle of the Netherlands. After fierce fighting, the poorly trained and equipped Dutch troops surrender to Germany, marking the beginning of 5 years of occupation. 1963, Project Mercury. The launch of the final Mercury mission, Mercury Atlas 9, with astronaut and badass American hero Gordo Cooper on board. He becomes the first American to spend more than a day in space and the last American to go into space alone. 1988. After more than 8 years of fighting, the Soviet army begins to withdraw 115,000 troops from Afghanistan. 2010, Jessica Watson becomes the youngest person to sail nonstop and unassisted around the world solo. Shit, I forgot to put the date on the... Okay, 13 May we're on now. 1204. Baldwin IX, Count of Flanders, is crowned as the first emperor of the Latin Empire. 1770, the 14-year-old Austrian Princess Maria Antonia changes her name to Marie Antoinette and marries the 15-year-old Dauphin Louis Auguste, who later becomes Queen of France, and I think you know how that story ends. 1842, the first major wagon train heading for the Pacific Northwest sets out on the Oregon Trail from Elm Grove, Missouri, with 100 pioneers. 1888, Nikola Tesla delivers a lecture describing the equipment which will allow efficient generation and use of alternating currents to transmit electrical power over long distances. And a mere 3 years later, on the exact same date in 1891, the International Electrotechnical Exhibition opens in Frankfurt, Germany, featuring the world's first long-distance transmission of high-power three-phase electric current. 1916, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland and the French Third Republic signed the secret wartime Sykes-Picot Agreement, partitioning the former Ottoman territories, including Iraq and Syria, an agreement whose effects are still being felt acutely right up until the present day. 1951, the first regularly scheduled transatlantic flights between Idlewild Airport in New York City and Heathrow Airport in London, operated by El Al Airlines. 1966, the Chinese Communist Party issues the 16 May notice marking the beginning of the Cultural Revolution. 1991, Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom addresses a joint session of the United States Congress. She is the first British monarch to address that august body. 17 May 1527. Panfilo de Narvaez departs Spain to explore Florida with 600 men. In 1536, he returns with 4. 1673, Louis Joliet and Jacques Marquette begin exploring the Mississippi River. 1756, the Seven-Year War formally begins when Great Britain declares war on France. 1814, the Constitution of Norway is signed and Crown Prince Christian Frederick of Denmark is elected King of Norway by the Norwegian Constituent Assembly. 1859, members of the Melbourne Football Club codified the first rules of Australian rules football. 1900, the children's novel The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum is first published in the United States. The first copy is given to the author's sister. 1939, the Columbia Lions and the Princeton Tigers play in the United States' first televised sporting event, a collegiate baseball game in New York City. 1954, the United States Supreme Court hands down a unanimous decision in Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, outlawing racial segregation in public schools. 1977, Nolan Bushnell opens the first Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater in San Jose, California, and 5 minutes later, the first meth-addicted single mom uses it as a free daycare. 1984, Prince Charles, as he was then, in one of my favorite quotes ever, calls a proposed addition to the National Gallery, London, quote, "a monstrous carbuncle on the face of a much-loved and elegant friend," sparking controversies on the proper role of the royal family in the course of modern architecture. 1995, a story we remember very well around here. Sean Nelson steals an M60 tank from the California Army National Guard Armory in San Diego and proceeds to go on one hell of a rampage. 2007, trains from North and South Korea crossed the 38th parallel in a test run agreed by both governments. This is the first time that trains have crossed the demilitarized zone since 1953. 18 May 1268, the Principality of Antioch, a Crusader state, falls to the Mamluk Sultan Baybars in the siege of Antioch. And 23 years later, on the same date, in 1291, the last and final shoe drops with the fall of Acre, the absolute end of the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. 1652, slavery in Rhode Island is abolished, although the law is not all that rigorously enforced right off the bat. 1783, the first United Empire Loyalists, who are also called traitorous bastard turncoats, reached Partown, Canada, after leaving the United States. 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte is proclaimed Emperor of the French by the French Senate. 1860, Abraham Lincoln wins the Republican Party presidential nomination over William H. Seward, who later becomes the United States Secretary of State and gets stabbed in the face for his trouble. 1896, the United States Supreme Court rules in Plessy v. Ferguson that the separate but equal doctrine is, in fact, constitutional. 1917, the Selective Service Act of 1917 is passed, giving the President of the United States the power of conscription. 1953, Jackie Cochran becomes the first woman to break the sound barrier. 1974, under the code name Project Smiling Buddha, India successfully detonates its first nuclear weapon, becoming the 6th nation to do so. 1994, Israeli troops finish withdrawing from the Gaza Strip, ceding the area to the Palestinian National Authority to govern. 2019, United States presidential election. Joe Biden announces his presidential campaign, declaring that he is the only Democrat who can beat George Bush in 1988. And that's all I have got.
Awesome.